Again, welcome to this month's Ward 5 Public Safety Call. I'm going to kick us off. I am Zachary Parker. I have the privilege of representing Ward 5 on the DC Council. And this call, as some of you may be familiar with, is an opportunity for neighbors to get an update on all of the work that our public safety agencies are leading in order to keep us safe. It is also an opportunity for you to be able to ask questions. This month, we will be joined by 3D, 4D, and 5D teams. We are awaiting our 5D and 3D commanders, Altieri and Bodler. And I believe we have members of the 4D outreach team here. I'm seeing Officer Hamrick, and they will share updates related to the latest happenings in 4D. Just to kick us off, I'm happy to report out on some of the work that my office has led on since our last call. As you know, last month was our third and final vote on the budget. And there were several updates that occurred yesterday, including the passage of a safe passage area around the Brooklyn Metro Station. Yesterday, I had an amendment included in the budget, and I'm not sure who's owning the slides, but if we can go to the next slide. But yesterday, in addition, I had an amendment that would require the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Engagement to make more transparent the data that goes into deciding the safe passage priority areas. And so I'm very proud of that. For those that may not be familiar, the Safe Passage Program is one of several efforts the district is offering to keep our young people in particular safe as they're traveling to and from schools. Much of Ward 5 before our budget win was not covered in the program, and I'm glad to say now the surrounding areas of the Brooklyn Metro Station will now be included. Also in the budget, I was happy to help secure funding for an HSEMA alert system that our school communities will be able to leverage to communicate with each other and with parents. This was something that came out of the Deputy Mayor for Education's school safety report that I commissioned last year. And this is a need because every time schools go on lockdown or there are alerts, we hear reports of there being faulty communication either between schools and or daycares in surrounding areas or with families. And so this HSEMA alert system will allow school communities to essentially download an app to effectively communicate with each other, parents and other stakeholders in surrounding areas. So that too will improve safety in our communities. One of the things I'm also looking forward to honing in on leading up to our last legislative meeting is tackling a potential cannabis shop on Florida Avenue that is in the proximity of Petite Scholars, a daycare center. As you may know, it is law that a cannabis shop cannot open up within a certain proximity of a school or a DPR park. However, daycare centers are not included in that formal definition. And I will be looking to not only encourage APCA to decline the application for the potential site on Florida Avenue, but ensure that in the future there are no cannabis shops that are approved in a certain proximity of a daycare center. So more to come on that. My team has also been leading work around the Trust Builders pilot on North Capitol Street. This is something that my team directly is leading. We often work in conjunction with other public safety teams as they are leading the work. And the goal here is to simply connect neighbors to programs and resources to disrupt cycles of addiction, violence, and poverty. You may have heard that our 3D and 5D teams have established drug-free zones in and around the North Capitol area. It is no secret that North Capitol Street has suffered from open-air drug markets and or routine violence from time to time. And our effort and role is to try to connect as many people to effective programming in the district to disrupt those cycles. And then last but not least, I wanted to follow up on the Russell Dunkley case. This is the individual that was accused accused of attacking the Petite Scholars educators in our Bloomingdale community last year at this point. He was detained for a bit of time at St. Elizabeth's, and then there was word that he was released. It is our understanding that he is still now being detained as he is awaiting a mental evaluation to see if he is able to stand trial. So more to come on this, but for right now, Bloomingdale neighbors, Ward 5 neighbors should know that Mr. Dunkley is not on the streets, and our understanding is that he is still being detained. More updates to come, but I wanted to just end also on the note that we are entering summer. We know that rates of violence tend to uptick during the summer. And so one of the things we have asked our MPD partners to do is to highlight some of the innovative strategies that they're leading. I'm going to shout out Commander Altieri from our 5D Police Department, who you may have noticed was on Good Morning America this week. And the work of 5D was highlighted as they have been leading an innovative pilot around package thefts. And he will certainly talk more about that. But these type of innovative approaches that may seem small in nature, they play a big role in keeping us all safe. And I want to just thank the commander and his team for all the great work they're doing. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our 3D commander, who I did see log on. I can't see them now, but Commander Baudelaire, I want to thank you for your partnership and the great work that you're leading, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Somebody's allowing me to talk now. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, and it's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, man. So I don't have a whole lot to brief out on today. What I do want to do is just go over the two PSAs that are encompassed within Ward 5. That's PSA 305 and 306. I'll be sharing after this call. I'll be emailing you a new 3rd District managerial and command staff contact list. This will have the lieutenant's photo, or lieutenant or captain's photo, a QR code for easy access to download their information to your phone, as well as the shift they're assigned to, the responsible PSA, email, and MPD cell phone contact. I made these a while back as a means to allow citizens to get in contact with their immediate white shirt. Coming, from DC myself, over the years, being able to reach out and touch your white shirt was always something that, citizens like to do, right? Have access to their white shirt, and white shirt meaning their manager. And that's something that I believed, 25 years ago when I started this journey. And to this day, I still, think that's a really good and powerful thing as a resident to have the ability to speak to the person that's strictly responsible for the geographic area where you live. We just had a promotion last week where we filled some positions within the 3rd District. I'm happy to say for the first time in 2.5 years of being the commander here, I finally have a full contingent of managers, meaning I have 3 captains and 10 lieutenants. There have been times over the last 2.5 years where we were down to 1 captain and 6 lieutenants, right? And that's no way to operate. Whether you're operating a mechanic shop or a councilman's office, you can't operate if you don't have the resources you need. So fortunately, as we move into the summer, I have the tools necessary now, tools meaning personnel and the assets to be able to really focus on every individual area, within my district efficiently and with due diligence. So PSA 305 is managed by Lieutenant Gavin Harrell. Lieutenant Harrell is a new lieutenant that was assigned to us about 3 months ago. And he is responsible for that geographic area. For Ward 5, that means everything south of Rhode Island or Florida Avenue. So as you take Florida Avenue and split everything south, so the Truxton neighborhood, North Capitol Street, 1400 block, and so forth. I'm sorry, not Lieutenant Harrell, Lieutenant Alan Herring, who also is one of our new lieutenants. He's responsible for that geographic area from Florida Avenue, North Capitol Street, all the way down to New York Avenue, and then all the way over to 7th Street. So that's a pretty large area, right? Encompasses Truxton, parts of Bloomingdale, really that New Jersey Avenue corridor, 5th and O, all the way over to 7th Street, 7th and O, all the way up. He goes all the way up 7th Street, so 7th and T, and then back down Florida Avenue. So big area. Ballou High School, Petite Scholars, our Munde Verde School. So a lot of important assets in that area he's responsible for. So year to date, when you look at our crime compared to where we were this time last year, we're sitting at a 33% overall reduction in crime. That's a 25% reduction in violent crime and a 34% reduction in property crime. Most notably, this area last year had a huge influx in theft from autos. I mean, I was getting emails daily, several times a day from citizens that were getting their cars broken into. We moved into our summer a little different. We tried to get ahead of, looking at our crime. We picked out the categories that spiked in the summer, and really around April, we started implementing our summer crime plans before it was summer, knowing that we could have some impact. What we've seen is an over 52% reduction in theft from autos. Part of that primarily is we've made some arrests. These are difficult cases to catch people breaking into cars because it can happen so quickly. And a lot of times there is no means or method behind why they do it. But that large influx that we saw last year wasn't because of the average person walking down the street, seeing something in a car and then breaking in. It was organized rings of young men, mostly, some women, that would show up in any particular neighborhood block, jump out of a car, smash 10 windows, reach into the cars and steal stuff, and literally be back in the suspect car and out of the block within 60 seconds. We have not seen that type of behavior like we did last year. And I think a lot of that is partly responsible because in early April, we made a couple of arrests, similar cases such as that. And we know that a lot of our crime or recidivism is created by the same people over and over. So hopefully we either scared them to not do it again, or at least had an impact to cut down on it. When you look at violent crime, we're down about 40% in our ADWs in PSA 305 and about 30% in our robberies. So we're doing a decent job. Now, that doesn't mean there still aren't, doesn't feel like there's a lot. In PSA 305 alone, which, I'm sorry, I keep saying PSA 305. What I meant to say was 306 and 308. What we see is, in reality, there's still a lot of robberies, but this time last year in PSA 308, which is Lieutenant Herring's area that I've been talking about, we had almost 50 robberies. We're sitting at 30 today. That's still a lot, but it's definitely trending in the right direction. Probably the most notable increase has been that of homicides. This time last year, we didn't have a single homicide in PSA 308. It's very unfortunate that as we sit here today, we've had 4 in PSA 308 year to date. So that's something that bothers me. Most of it was not in Ward 5. It was on the other section of the district that belongs to Councilmember Pinto and Councilmember Nadeau in different portions. When you look at PSA 306, that was Lieutenant Anna Daru. Happy for her. She actually just recently got transferred to our Special Operations Division and will be running our new horse-mounted unit that we've decided to bring back to the department after several years of letting that falter. She has been replaced by an equally energetic new lieutenant, Lieutenant Chania Hawkins. She is a veteran of the Metropolitan Police Department, has many years on the job, just got promoted as a lieutenant, but man, does she have some energy. And I'm looking forward to what she can bring to the LeDroit Park and Bloomingdale neighborhood. She's very responsive. In her first week alone, I think she answered about 30 emails, introducing herself to the neighbors and really just jumping in, feet first. We're seeing some positive traction in 306 as well. We have a 30% reduction in overall crime with a 12% modest decrease in violent crime, mostly because of a decrease in robberies again. And then she's got double-digit property crime decreases, including motor vehicle theft that's down 54% compared to this time last year, which is phenomenal. So, not to bore you with numbers, but I know numbers kind of tell the story a little bit. But I'm no fool when it comes to knowing that it's what your constituents and the residents that we serve feel that really means the difference, right? So regardless, when I go to community meetings, I really don't even talk about numbers anymore, because whether numbers are up or down, if I don't feel safe when I walk out into my neighborhood or walk out onto my street side, those numbers really don't mean anything to me. So, we've really doubled down on our outreach. We just did LaTroy Park Community Day. We're looking to do some stuff down in the Truxton area in the next couple weeks. Where really we show up in places and spaces, not in crisis, right? I mean, we're dealing like everybody with staffing shortages, and it's hard, to make $1 out of 15 cents. I don't mean to steal that lyric from somebody, but it really is. In reality, that there is no expectation that we're going to lessen what we do because we have less resources. We just got to find ways to be more innovative and in many cases, just more efficient in what we do every day. So we're going to be really pushing outreach as we move through the summer months. Just as a means, again, is letting community members feel us in times when they're not calling 911, because I think that makes a world of difference. I was very happy. Hopefully you guys have heard the same. Mundo Verde's parents coalesced and brought us a thank you basket at the end of a bunch of chocolates and food at the end of the school year. They were very appreciative to the assets and resources that we pushed in that area leading up to the last month or two of the school. As you know, historically, that poor school, because of where it's situated, has had critical incidents occur around the immediate area of the school almost every year for the last 5 years. This is the first year that they did not start off their school year with sounds of gunshots, nor did they end the school year with any critical incidents. So a win all around on that one. You may or may not have seen, I had a crime camera put up at North Capitol and P on our side, as well as a mobile camera that I moved in front of the school to give it that much more extra layer of, comfort for the parents. I'll probably be moving it for the summer, but I intend probably to put it back there once school starts, because it seems like that really made the parents feel a lot more comfortable having that, CCTV asset there. Outside of that, we've been very communicative with the Hanover Association as well as Bloomingdale. I don't have anything really at the top of my list that is pressing other than just more presence in the neighborhood. And I'll open up the questions, sir, if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Commander. That is great. I was aware of the camera. I could also echo the concerns of our Mundo Verde families who are highly engaged,
Oh, yeah.
understandably so, just given where that school is situated and the incidents that we've had. I do have a couple of questions that I'm going to turn it to Oliver on my team to see if there are other questions from the audience. One is around the open or the drug-free zones that you established along North Capitol. Just what were the outcomes of that? Then secondly, are there any follow-up details from the shooting either on and around N Street or R Street in 3D?
Okay, so let me unpack that. The first answer is our drug-free zone. We ended that with, I want to say 7 arrests were made, varying everything from urinating in public to, possession of illegal narcotics. Obviously, that runs 120 hours consecutive, so 5 days. We ran ours Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. and we ended it Monday at 7:59 a.m. So we didn't cross that threshold of 120 consecutive hours. We've done it one time on the 3D side. Commander Altieri's done one also on his side that he can speak to. We are in a rotation where we're kind of coming back around and should be popping up another drug-free zone on North Capitol Street, likely in the next 2 to 3 weeks. When I do get notification that we'll be circling back, I'll surely shoot your office an email just so you're aware of it, so you can let your constituents know about it. But I think overall, I mean, they prove useful to a point. We've got some people that, they could care less if a police officer standing in the corner, they're going to commit a crime right in front of us, right? So a sign's not necessarily going to deter everybody from committing a crime. But what I do think it does, it brings awareness to our presence, and it makes the community feel good that there's that extra layer of action being taken in a neighborhood. We could set up a drug-free zone 24 hours and 7 days a week for the whole year, and we're still unfortunately going to have people come to that area to use drugs, buy drugs, and sell drugs, right? What we need more action relative to enforcement. And to be frankly honest with you, the lack of having a vice unit within a district as a patrol commander, I'm really I'm really burdened by what I can do, right? Back in the day when we had vice units, I could put vice officers in plain clothes. They could go down there, buy drugs, make arrests, do plainclothes surveillance where we could watch people sell drugs. We don't have that capability anymore, right? So we have to rely on the citywide narcotic unit that has a responsibility of the entire city to be able to come over and do that type of work. And we just, that's stretching them so thin. We rarely see them in our area. And when they do, it's great, but they come and they leave because they've got other responsibilities as well. Whereas those localized vice units were dedicated to the district 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and we could use them in those type of capacities. So that's just I just say that because that's one of those topics that over the years, Chief Lanier decided to move away from that in 2013, and we've really never had a conversation since then about what that looks like. Every single day, I get an email from a citizen asking why we can't bring back the vice units, why we can't, because they remember those days, right? They remember what that looked like. So, in the interim, outside of the drug-free zones, we have to rely on our patrol officers or our crime suppression officers who are all in uniform, all in marked scout cars to be able to see the same thing we would expect an undercover police officer to see, which we know just doesn't happen, right? Most criminals, right, are not going to commit a crime in front of a marked police car, in uniform, right? And the actions that would lead to reasonable suspicion and or probable cause to move forward with a stop and arrest just aren't going to be there unless we have the ability to watch them when they don't think we're watching. So that's just one thing to think about. Second, so I do think the drug-free zones are useful. I don't think we're getting our bang for our buck out of them because of the lack of ability to do that type of work during that drug-free zone. And second, the two shootings, the one you were referring to on N Street, no, we have not made any movement, unfortunately, on that case. That case remains open. I was on the scene of that homicide, and we just it appears at face value we think it was a targeted event. The young man that was the decedent in that case was known to hang out around that area. Usually, during the daytime. It's rare that we ever saw him out late at night, but we just don't really have a whole lot on that. And the R Street case as well remains open right now.
Thank you for that. I don't think we have any questions. I just want to reiterate how concerned I am just about the influx of guns. I know that's probably not reassuring to neighbors. I am grateful for the hard work at MPD and collecting more and more guns, but I remember having a conversation with Altieri, and he's like, "Great, we collected more guns this month," and it's a positive, but it's also kind of a reminder that we're seeing more and more guns flowing into the city. Anything you want to say there, and I'll give you the last word, as well as I just wanted to note on North Capitol and P Street. This is not specifically related to MPD, but there was a bus stop there. We are working with WMATA to replace that bus stop. It was moved, and now neighbors, namely our seniors in the area, in the Hanover community in particular, are complaining about having to walk across Florida to get to the bus stop. Where I think we've landed with WMATA is that they will put a bus stop back on Bates, not quite P Street, but Bates, in the coming weeks. So I just did want to give that update to neighbors, and we'll share more information when we have concrete details. But anything last words around guns and the work that MPD is doing around guns?
Sure. So thank you for the bus stop action. I mean, that has kind of been a bane of my existence. Trying to get Metro Transit to police that bus stop is almost impossible right now. They're stretched thin as well, and they're moving across the entire city. And the unfortunate circumstances are we've had some folks that were nefarious, drug users or dealers using that bus stop as an opportunity, as a decoy to be in that area, right? Although we may not have loitering laws, most folks, we had folks that were using that bus stop to conduct some of their illegal businesses, and being right in front of a smoke shop wasn't helping us either. So they were using that as almost a cover to conduct some illegal businesses in the causeway. So moving that, even if it is just a Bates Street, really will help us police that area a little better. Relative to guns, I mean, sir, I've spent the majority of my career in units and divisions dedicated to illegal gun recovery in the city. I was part of the gun recovery unit when it initially was created. And I can tell you, Commander Altieri is right, and you are as well, that we're seeing an influx of guns in the city like we've never seen before. Not only are we seeing an influx of guns, but the types of weaponry and the amount of ammunition that is found with these firearms, as well as conversion kits, is astronomical. It seems like right now, even just go back 5 years, if there were a couple people committing crime, one person had a gun while the others helped commit the crime. Now everybody has a gun if they're committing a crime together. It seems like the criminals' cool new accessory is for everybody to have one. And we're seeing more and more now that when we have sounds of gunshots in community, it's not just a single shot, two shot, three shots heard. It's sometimes 10, 15, 20 rounds are heard, because what a lot of young men and women who are carrying these guns illegally are doing is they're obtaining conversion hardware to take a regular semi-automatic handgun and turn it into a almost fully automatic, what would be a fully automatic pistol, where they can pull the trigger one time and every bullet in that magazine fires at a fast rate, right? So you could literally empty a 30-round magazine in about 2 seconds with a conversion switch on a semi-automatic Glock. A lot of our guns are, what people here called ghost guns, right? Are personally manufactured firearms, PMFs. These are firearms that are made either 3D laser printers, or they're made from, buying parts to guns and putting them together and creating them. What happens there is those now either don't have serial numbers or they're not tracked like they would be if you purchased a firearm at a store. We do see an influx in robberies and burglaries of gun stores in Maryland and Virginia. Those are very unfortunate, because when those happen, although the ATF will move in and the FBI and ATF will be the lead on those type of cases, we see an influx of, could be anywhere between 20 or 50 to 100 guns hit the street immediately, because these folks will literally go ram a car into a gun store and just steal everything in the store. So that's something that we battle. And when those guns hit the street, I mean, when I tell you we're out looking for every single one of them, we are. It's unfortunate sometimes we don't find them until destruction has happened as a result of it. So Commander Altieri, the third district has recovered more guns year to date than we did almost all of last year, which means we're and not only are we recovering them, but we're recovering them in busy, congested areas, right? The U Street corridor, which may not be Ward 5, but still is known to everybody on this call. The nightlife area, where there's plenty of police officers at all times. Folks are walking around with guns in their waistbands, leaving them in their cars. I mean, every single night we're taking guns off of people down in that nightlife area. And that for me is really just I get a lot of anxiety around that, because, somebody with an illegal firearm, especially with a conversion switch in an area that's heavily populated, where people are consuming alcohol and bad decisions get made, that could be a real disaster should somebody decide to do harm to community. So, we do everything we can to stop these guns, before they become crime weapons. But yes, to answer your question, I agree with you wholeheartedly. There are more guns out there today than probably ever before.
Well, I want to thank you, Commander, for being here. If you want, feel free to stick around, although I know if you need to jump, you're busy, and it's good news to hear that you now have a fully staffed team. I'm going to transition to Commander Altieri for a similar reason, because I know time is of the essence, and then we'll move to our 4D team. I do have one question. I'm not going to ask you, Commander, because this is a political question, so I'll take the political question. It was essentially thoughts on the Supreme Court bump stock decision. I'm not going to ask you to weigh in, although feel free if you want. But I just continue to worry that we don't have common sense gun laws in this country. And, I'm of the mind one can have a gun responsibly. But we, as the commander alluded to in DC, are seeing more and more gun violence and more guns in the hands of the wrong individuals. And so that decision seems antithetical to the common sense approach that I think we need. With that, Commander Altieri, I'm going to turn it over to you. If for those that may be joining us, Commander Altieri leads up our 5D team, and 5D covers the majority of Ward 5, but Ward 5 has 3 police districts, 3D, 4D, and 5D. And the commander, too, has been a great partner. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, Councilmember. How are you? Hi, everybody. How's it going? As always, super thrilled to be here. Super thrilled to always be working with Councilmember Parker, who is a wonderful advocate for law enforcement and his team. I feel like Oliver, I'm going to start claiming you on my taxes. We talk so much every day that I feel like you're a family member now. So thanks for having me. Much to echo Commander Butler's sentiments, and just so you know, Commander Butler is a great partner as well. Jimmy and I have known each other since we were both at the 3rd District as sergeants. He was a vice sergeant at the time. I had come over from the detective division as a patrol sergeant. And, like him, I was spent my time early on in my career in the vice offices when we still had them in the districts. Believe it or not, Councilman Parker, I think I've shown you the photos. I actually used to be an undercover officer. My job was to go by heroin and cracked on Arthur Capers and areas like that. Syfax dwellings over in 1D when I was a younger man with hair. But then they were always a really good asset to have. And, the gun thing is sort of something that we do talk about a lot. The council member and I speak about it often. While I'm excited we're getting guns because I want guns off the street, the part that's not exciting is the fact that there's so many guns to have and so many to get. Our numbers, like Commander Butler talked about, especially illegal ghost guns, it's crazy. I remember when it was less than 30 a year we were getting, and we're getting in the hundreds now. And that's just a gun that you can buy, and if you have basic working mechanical knowledge put together, it's an untraceable firearm. I mean, and the thing that's crazy is a lot of the owners that have these guns aren't necessarily doing it for criminal reasons. Some of them are gun collectors and things like that, and they want them. But when they get stolen, they don't report it because they have an illegal gun. So it's all part of this just terrible cycle right now. While I'm glad we have gotten more guns this year, at the same time, it just, I think to me, it gives me cause for concern because I wonder, how many more guns are out there we're not getting. Much like the 3rd District and actually the department wide, we are down in violent crime, we're down in property crime. The only increase we have in the 3rd District, the only increase is theft from autos. That's it. So our violent crime's down 21%, our property crime's down 11%, our robberies and carjackings are down, our motor vehicle thefts are down, and I want to talk about that in a second, and our homicides are down. You can see our theft from autos have increased. I really think, and Commander Butler, if he wants to chime in too, I really think part of the reason for the robbery reductions we're seeing right now is the reduction in the motor vehicle thefts. I think not only is it because of the great work the officers are doing, like Jimmy was talking about his team, I think part of it is also the fact that, Hyundai and Kia stepped up. We're seeing a lot less cars stolen. They're getting the patches done. MPD did a lot with the clubs and the anti-theft devices and the tracking devices. And that's really helped dwindle this. When you look at our robberies now, in comparison to last year, you're seeing a lot less what we call spree robberies. You're seeing a lot less pattern robberies, and you're seeing a lot less robberies from vehicles. You're still seeing it. Don't get me wrong, it still exists, but we're not seeing it on the level we saw it last year. So I think that is a really good thing. Right now, the retail theft and package operations, it's something, yes, we do here. Most of the districts are doing it now. I know 3D is doing it. Retail theft and package theft, people often sit and say, like the council member talked about the Good Morning America thing, and it was fun to be on there to represent the agency. And it's great to work somewhere where they let us try different stuff. But really, when you do that, of course, I got a bunch of emails like, oh my gosh, there was just a murder last month, and you're talking about package theft, or you're talking about retail theft. Well, the thing is commanders of districts, we have to take an overall look at crime. We have to have a very high level look and try to think about everything. While we want to drive violent crime down, and that is our number one priority, of course, is that, we also have to say, hey, we need businesses to stay in the city. We don't need more places like Walmart leaving. What can we do to help? So we do conduct weekly retail operations where our crime suppression team actually goes down to participating businesses. I'm not going to get into which ones they are, but we go to participating businesses. We set up in their security office, and we wait for people to come in and steal. And when they leave the store, the arrest team's waiting for them. We also wait for people that have been barred from the store previously for theft. We arrest them for theft. We then arrest them for contempt of court if they have a stay away order. So, or if they're barred or a sprint level entry. But I think that's really helped us a lot. Our theft is down 17% from where it was last year. And I really think the reason for that is because of the types of operations we're doing. Package theft operation, we're not going to catch everybody. We could put a package out for 3 weeks in a row and not get anyone. But the thing is, the criminals know it's out there, and part of it is having them think about it before they go to steal. Is this the day I'm going to get caught doing this? So that's a way to bring that down. We also got new cameras installed in 5D. So we have Bladensburg and New York Avenue has one, 4th and Morris, Oren and Neal Street, and P Street in Florida. And we do so much together with Commander Butler. Like the camera we got put on North Capitol part of the reason was because of Mundo Verde, and also I'd be remiss if I didn't thank them because they also dropped it. I know we're not part of 3D, but I know we've done a lot with them over there, and they actually dropped a basket off. Our officers loved it, so thank you so much for that. It was I believe it was candy from Russia, so they thought that was pretty interesting. So positive wise, our ADWs are down 31%. Our thefts I talked about, our burglaries are down, and I wanted to put Sarah this one statistic because I'm not a big numbers guy, which is weird because I used to run financial crimes. You'd think I'd be a total nerd when it comes to numbers. But one thing I did notice looking at crime stats, because often we say how bad last year was, and last year was really bad. We talked about it last year when it was going on. We've talked about it since. The one thing I noticed with our district, with 5D in particular, since 2022, we're down 16% year to date from where we were in 2022, which was what we had, which was considered a good year. So not only is our crime down 21%, violent crime wise from last year, when it was really bad, we also have a reduction from the 2022 year. So I think we're turning in the right direction. And look, I'll be honest, you guys who have been calls with me know I don't pull punches. I think it's my job is to be honest with you and tell you stuff. You know, we're doing it with less people. So we're doing it with less people. We're doing it through programs like the programs we talked about. We're doing it through our deployments and really, really drilling down and trying to see the areas where these crimes are happening and trying to deploy in those directions. And that's what our hotspot policing is all about. And we talked about that the last call. Now we're getting ready to reassess those numbers. Now, the interesting thing is this with hotspot policing, if you look at a lot of our neighborhoods right now, neighborhoods that last year had traditionally high rates of violence, homicides, things like that, we have very little of that going on in those areas now. So while we're going to look at statistics and we're going to say, okay, what has crime shifted on these hotspots? We're also going to take into account historical things we know. For instance, I know there's certain neighborhoods, I pull a hotspot out of it, probably that day someone's going to get shot. So, you know, there's a lot going into it to make sure we're up on our plan. But I think we're doing a good job right now. We got 2 new lieutenants, which is awesome. So if official wise we're fully staffed, I wish, you know, the department's doing a great job along with Councilmember Parker and the council and the DC government trying to get us staffed back up again. That's a slow process. But while that's going on, you know, we have to still try to think of ways to get crime down. And a lot of you folks live in areas that we have great partners there. For instance, anyone on this call who's in like the Union Market area, Eden Development is amazing. I mean, they work very closely with us as far as trying to deal with security, cameras, things like that. So there's a lot of really good partners out there that are really helping us out and really helping us be successful. And the only other thing I want to add is this. We've had some really good successes this year. In April, we had the lowest amount of robberies this district's had in 4 years. We had 14 robberies in that month. That's the lowest in 4 years. In May, we had no deaths through violence in this district. We picked up a homicide statistic because somebody who died in January, the results, the autopsy were not released until May. So that gives us the number. But I'm saying nobody was killed through gun violence for a month. That's only happened 3 times in 4 years. So we are really seeing good strides. Can we do better? 100%. We are seeing robberies going up a little bit right now. Now they're still down for June what they were before, but they're not as low as they were last month. Reason for that? School's out, the weather's nice. So you have more people out, you have more people that are potential targets, you know, so we are really trying to be up on our game with that and trying to make sure we're in the right spaces and places. So far, we're still under in the robberies. But again, like Captain Butler talked about, you know, numbers are numbers. If you're a victim, you know, you don't want to hear that. And I totally understand. But that's kind of where we are right now in 5D. We're going to keep pressing forward. Happy as always to be on the call as the council member, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Well, Commander, thank you for that. And the headline for me, and I want to assure neighbors, is that violence is trending in the right direction, which is down. There's still work to do. But I would credit a lot of the progress that we're seeing to the coordination efforts that I know are happening behind the scenes with MPD. Commander, as you mentioned, you're in touch with our team almost daily. You're in touch with community meetings. In fact, sometimes I go to community meetings with the commander and I'm like, it's time to go home. They're going to keep you all night. So, you know, those things seem minor and insignificant, but I think the more people are informed, know who to contact, know who to reach out to, know when to flag something, it contributes to the numbers that we're seeing. There was also action that the council took around Security C that I think is contributing. And I think residents are sick and tired of the violence and are pitching in, rolling up their sleeves and being part of the solution. So I want to thank our neighbors as well. Commander, I do have a few questions for you. One, I wanted to ask a similar question around gun violence and just what trends you're seeing in 5D and what would you have us think about as we're going into the summer months?
That's a good question. I mean, really what I think with the gun violence is just what Commander Butler said. It's bizarre. So we'll have 4 people committing a robbery and all 4 of them have handguns. That wasn't like that even 5 years ago. We're seeing a lot more things like that. So basically what I would say to the community as far as gun violence is going, you just have to make sure you're safe. If somebody's trying to rob you, give them your stuff. If you see somebody that's out, and we get a lot of calls like this, and this is part of the reason, Councilmember, you talked about the community, being fed up and helping. They really have, because by citizens seeing people with a gun, like we had one the other day, they saw a guy walking down the street, he's stretching like this. When he stretched his shirt up, saw a gun, texted us, we were able to come get a gun. So the numbers we have, 50411 for text, 727-9099 for anonymous calls, those are so helpful. And that's really, I think, what's going to help lead to the gun violence. I actually think we need stronger legislation towards firearms. I know that I never say anything against other government agencies, and I know you joke about that with me all the time at these meetings. I don't, but in this particular thing, I will say yes. Is someone with a parent who suffers from a disorder who I feel shouldn't be allowed to own a gun, the state my dad's in, he's allowed to have a concealed carry permit. And to me, it's what's wrong with him. It's just absurd. So there has to be better laws for that. 100%.
That's right. That's right. Another topic, and I want you to give that number again, if you could put in the chat for those that may be joining us. Traffic violence is something that is top of mind. I was just at a meeting yesterday about South Dakota and safety improvements that DDOT is suggesting. And one of the things that kept coming up is, well, if MPD stopped more speeding cars, we wouldn't have to think about X, Y, and Z. I know because of capacity constraints, it is hard for MPD to pull over every speeding or reckless driver, although it does happen. If you could just highlight some of the joint efforts that I know you have been leading around traffic, as well as what you would educate neighbors around, like how the agency is dealing with traffic violence in the district.
Yes, sir, no problem. And yeah, it's actually, you're right. We do see a lot of violence stemming from road rage altercations and things like that. A lot more. That's kind of been on the rise since 2019 is when I really started to first notice it, when I was over in Ward 7. What we did in Ward 7 is I started a joint traffic operation with PG County. The reason I did that was because of fatalities and because of what you're talking about, violence stemming from traffic. It was great. We worked the joint border over there together. We did a monthly operation. It really helped us. And again, much like the package that thing, it's really about changing behavior, right? So people see you out there, they know you're out there, they don't know when you're going to be back out there, and it kind of stops that. So when I came here as an inspector, I couldn't do it. But once I took over the district, we started joint traffic operations here now. So monthly, Captain Merrill now does it for me. He is the Sector 2 captain here, and he's doing a really good job. We've gotten with Mount Rainier and PG County and the 4th District as well, and we do a joint traffic operation every month around our shared border. We do that for a bunch of reasons. It's not really just to write tickets. It's not to generate income for the city. It's really to deal with the citizens, interact, and try to change behavior through education and let them know we're out there. And really to try to curb some of this, not just the violence, but some of these fatalities. We've had way too many traffic fatalities this year.
That's exactly right. In fact, traffic violence, if I have the stats correctly, have increased every year for the last 5 years. I say it all the time. Last year, Ward 5 led the city in traffic violence. Wards 5, 7, and 8 lead the city in terms of traffic violence. And I share that because, and I will be frank, sometimes it's framed as though a black and white thing. Like, the city is acting because white residents or newer residents in communities care about traffic safety. But when we look at the stats, it is impacting predominantly Black areas, and Black individuals are the ones paying the price for dangerous driving conditions. So
it's interesting you say that, Councilmember, because when I was in Ward 7, predominantly Ward 7 is African-American districts, Ward 7 and 8. And when we would go to meetings, even dealing with the amount of violence we had over there, because it was a very busy district, the same thing was traffic. Because look, man, people are concerned about their kids. People want to make it forth. We as a police agency have to focus on multiple things. And a lot of it's quality of life stuff. Even if we're giving one person relief one time they encounter us by seeing us out there, stopping that person on Eastern Avenue, that is worth it because one citizen feels better. And hopefully we can have that go from 1 to 2 to 10 to, the 26,000 we have in Ward 5. But, it's a slow process, but we're working on it. We also have a dedicated traffic unit here, and we're really focusing on the scooters now as well. I'm sure you've seen that in the news.
Yes, yes. Two more questions. I'm not seeing any questions in our Q&A, but for those that are joining us, if you have questions, feel free to use the chat or our Q&A. Commander, last month you shared operations that occurred in Carver-Langston and Trinidad in joint operation with our federal partners. Has there been any update to either of those operations and or movement in those communities?
No, so far it's been pretty good. We're still keeping a footprint there. The thing that's key, and 4D did this the really big one that everybody kind of found out about right away was Kennedy Street, right, which was a couple years ago in 4D. And what you find out is, once you get the major players out of the way, you have to really keep a footprint and a presence because you want to make sure no one's coming to backfill that space, right? So we're really being cognizant in Trinidad and in Carver-Langston right now about keeping our presence there to keep everything down. We have had some complaints over on Sims. I will tell the citizens we're not running an operation with BCSD yet. And again, like I told you and I told everybody last year when we were doing this, and I feel bad, Councilmember, because you have such a great relationship, but we never tell anybody what's going on when it's going on, right? But we're not doing anything yet on those areas, but we are focused, like Sims, for example. We've had VCSD come up there with some UCs, and we've been doing a couple buys here and there, trying to, really get the feel for it and see if anything's coming back in. So far, it's been pretty good, though, and things have been going pretty well. That's the first time, I don't know if we talked about it last month, but that's the first time the city's actually taken down 2 major crews that were rival crews at the same time. So I think we got a double benefit community-wise from it. The narcotics, of course, the interfering with the drug trade, but also really sort of interfering with the violence because we really got a lot of the major folks off the street, and they're all looking at serious federal time right now.
Yes, yes. And I just think of the families and the children that have long been caught in the crosshairs of those beefing crews. So thank you for that. One last question for me. I know and I appreciate that you are super responsive, 5D is super responsive, but there are times where I hear from neighbors say, I call and it takes a long time, or officer came out and they didn't take my complaint serious. I think of a neighbor who said, officer came out, there was a neighbor suffering from a mental illness issue or crisis, and they didn't address it at that time, and that person came back and set my house on fire. Or there are these times where it's almost if MPD would have, this wouldn't have happened. Sure. In those instances, what would you share with neighbors? How, if they are not satisfied with response time, or if they are not satisfied with the response, what would you encourage neighbors to do next?
Well, I mean, I can tell you, but let's talk about the fire person, because, we've developed pretty good relationships since we actually met with her at a meeting with you. Part of the issue is this. Police are like everybody else. You have the ones that do a really good job, you have the people that do an okay job, and you have the ones that do a horrible job. My job as district commander is to try to get everybody up to a level where they're doing a good job. So if I don't know about the behavior, I can't correct it. So I would say the best thing to do is this. If you're dealing with something with my district and you're not satisfied, drop me an email. Depending on what it is, and I put you in touch with one of the sector captains or sector lieutenants to talk to you about it. But we take it very seriously. We watch the body or camera footage to see what happened and really try to get to the bottom of it. Oftentimes, it's a misunderstanding of something we can or can't do, But a lot of times the problem is, and I find this with officers, younger officers now, I don't know if it's because we all communicate through text or something, I don't know, I'm old, but I find a lot of times that we're not always telling people what they call telling them the why. I find generally on a scene, no matter how upset somebody is, if I can say, we're taking this action because of this, even if it doesn't fully satisfy them or make them feel complete, because, people have emotions and they feel a certain way, it at least gives them something of understanding and it sort of helps. Does that make sense? So, definitely you could reach out. I would say drop me an email. if it's, you can always call the 5th district first, but shoot me an email. If it's something, is really serious, we'll get you in touch with IED, which is internal affairs, if it's that kind of thing. But if it's something where our officers, like the fire thing was a good example. Once we talked to that woman and sat down and really communicated, it seemed like she kind of got what we could and couldn't do. It didn't make it 100% better because that was a scary situation. Oh my gosh, it was horrible, but I think that did help a little bit.
And neighbors, thank you for that. That is what I wanted, that you can reach out to the commander. He is really accessible. He won't say this, but I would say if, I would reserve for the more serious incidents to reach out to the commander and follow protocol. But there are incidents where MPD's hands are tied, so to speak, based on law and/or policy. And sometimes neighbors aren't up to speed on what that policy may be or what the law is. And there may be moments of frustration. You can always reach out to our office, but I would say 90% of the time, especially in 5D, we've heard glowing remarks about the commander's team and the engagement of 5D officers. So I did want to just note that. Last thing, Commander, there have been a string of robberies in Brooklyn. We've noted an uptick in that community in particular. My team was just talking about this today. I recall last year there were a series of robberies that served as the catalyst for the robbery suppression unit coming in and getting things under control. Can you just speak to what you're seeing happening in Brooklyn in particular and what efforts are underway to get the robberies under control?
Sure. And I also dropped in here, Councilmember, I dropped in here for everybody. This site that I put in, this shows our directives. They're open to the public. So if you ever have questions and you want to kind of look something up, if an officer tells you something and you're like, do you really have to call somebody to arrest this 12-year-old? Is that really the truth? You can kind of look it up in there to sort of, get the answers you might want to see, or at least see it in writing to verify what we're telling you is the truth. So Brooklyn, yeah, it's interesting we're talking about Brooklyn right now because I was just talking to our crime analyst because like I said, we're getting ready to look at the hotspots again. And the interesting thing with Brooklyn right now is the activity is further south than it was last year. So last year, most of the robbers we saw were north of Monroe Street, going down towards Michigan Avenue, that triangle we kind of etched out there. Lately, they've been kind of further down. So what we're trying to do right now, we're looking at the hotspot and a way to adjust it so we can get the most coverage. So our hotspots are staffed by overtime units, and that's 24/7. So we have 7 of those right now in 5D. Brooklyn is one of them. We might be shifting it a little bit further south, though, because what we're really seeing, someone just got robbed. 2 people got robbed on Reed yesterday. So we're kind of looking more towards the direction closer to Royal End Avenue, a little bit south of Monroe, as opposed to last year. And what we're not seeing is kind of like what we're not seeing all over. We're not seeing these vehicle robberies. Do you remember last year where people would pull up, I don't want to say restaurants because, well, I love all the restaurants in Brooklyn and I'd like to give them a shout out. I don't want to give them a shout out associated with a robbery, but someone would be going to a particular restaurant in Brooklyn and next thing you know, a car is pulling up broad daylight, robbing them. We're really not seeing that. And, last year it seemed to be more of kids from Ward 7, Ward 8, PG County coming in vehicles committing the robberies. Now we're starting to see more robberies on foot. So we're kind of narrowing it down to a couple spots where we think they might be. We do know there's actually 2 crews we know that are operating in the Eckington area. I don't know if they're going all the way up to Brooklyn, but I'm definitely sure they're part of what's responsible for the mountain bike trail and things like that. And we do know there's a loose group of people over in Edgewood. The problem is, like last year when we got the guy, remember the 18 robberies, is building the cases on them. And one thing that I just wanted to bring up that I know I'm not going to disparage another agency, but one of the frustrating things we're having is this with the juveniles. We have kids that are literally out on release right now, pending robberies. I mean, so they were arrested for robbery. They're out committing another robbery. The young man at Harris Teeter, do you remember last year, Harris Teeter, got shot by the security guard he tried to run over?
Yes.
He was initially going to be charged with attempted murder. He's out. He took an assault charge. He's out. We believe he's probably involved in a couple of other things right now. So that is very difficult. And I think the reason, like in April when we were so low in robberies, I think the reason is we had the drivers of violence were at the time held. They were locked up, they were held. Now some of them are out. So it's a matter of like not targeting those individuals, but making sure, they're doing the right thing. I don't know, like even, we had the robbery in broad daylight, 15th in Maryland. yesterday,
Mhm.
day before yesterday. The guy who committed that robbery, he's on pretrial for a homicide. He's out pending a homicide trial from 2019, and he's committing another robbery with a gun. So those things are a little bit challenging right now, and I think that's kind of what's leading to some of the stuff we have going on. We have people that we know are out there, and when I say this to the community, I don't want you to think like, I know they're out there. I'm not doing anything. Believe me, I'm doing everything I possibly can. But in order to build a case, I have to have probable cause to do it. I can have suspicion all day, even if it's reasonable suspicion. But in order to make that arrest, I need PC. And that's what our detectives are working very hard to try to do. We do think some of these robberies on the mountain bike trail specifically may be connected, but we don't think a lot of the Brookland ones right now are, as opposed to last year. Last year, we saw multiple robberies, same crew, same area.
Thank you for that, Commander, and I really appreciate the candid discussion. For those that may be tuning in, just to level set, our U.S. Attorney focuses on adults. Our Attorney General focuses on juveniles. For juveniles of a certain age, I believe 17 and older, the U.S. Attorney has the jurisdiction to determine whether or not they will be charged as a juvenile or adult. And there is a question, Commander, what is going to be done about juvenile crime and criminals being out on bond? I mean, that is a political question.
I can tell you what I'm doing when you get
Yes,
there, but
yes, I'll take the political side of that. I mean, it really is, we need to have more frank discussion with and alongside the Attorney General. Just today, there was a hearing at the council on truancy. I introduced a truancy bill. We know truancy is contributing greatly to juveniles not being in school. In some of our high schools around the city, we're seeing 70%, 80%, up to 95% of students chronically absent or truant. That is bizarre and outrageous. And we also just should be clear-eyed about uh, striking the right balance between rehabilitation and supporting young people, whether that's through diversion or other programs, and holding them accountable. You know, to hear the commander say that someone is out pending a murder charge, that gives me heartburn. I'm all for rehabilitation, especially for our young people. I also think if you are committing the most heinous of crimes for the sake of our community and safety, you should be held accountable, full stop. And I don't, you know, we have had those conversations as a city with Security C. We are continuing to have those conversations somewhat with the mayor's proposed legislation uplift and the truancy bills that are before the city, but clearly more is needed. So I'll stop there. Commander, feel free to jump in.
So, we can't really, I don't know who posed the question, but whoever posed that question, it's a good question. Unfortunately, MPD doesn't have anything to do with that, but for our small part, what we're trying to do, my old commander, Daria Habibullah, when I was over in Ward 7, instituted a program where if we had people who we knew were repeat offenders for robberies, carjackings that were juveniles, or if they were in halfway houses out from DYRS, we would actually do visits. And the reason we do those visits is not to harass these kids. The reason we do the visits at their house is to see if the family has something that they need. Is there something else that can be done? Is there a program we could try to get the family themselves into to try to improve? And I'm not going to lie to you. It's also because I want them to know that, yes, we know that, you're out doing stuff. So, we're present. We're also doing visits on the halfway houses in 5D. We have 2 in 5D where they house juveniles that have been not sentenced yet, or that's what their sentence is to do time in a halfway house. Most of them have curfews. So we are going there to make sure that they're abiding by the curfew. Like if you're on a 24-hour curfew, are you there? If they are not there, we are notifying the judge and the OAG to see if they're going to do anything as far as, hitting them for contempt or something like that for not doing what they're supposed to do. And again, in no way we're doing this to harass people, but it's a tough thing because you see these people that are out and these guys have like multiple charges and we can't harass them. We're not going to do that, but at the same time, like, what are we going to do? Part of it is just trying to let them know that, yeah, hey, look, we know you're out on this, you need to be accountable for this. If not, we need to do what we have to do with the courts. But the things with what's going to happen overall, I mean, that again, like you said, that's more of a political question, which is not my forte, unfortunately.
All right. Oliver, are there any more questions?
No, there's no questions. There was one question that the commander he had spoke to in regards to Sims and Montello and the adjustments that he's been applying to that area.
Yeah, we've actually gotten some pretty good
Yeah.
arrest out of that area. So
There is this last question, what can we do as residents? I would just say doing more of this, tuning in to these conversations, being as informed as possible, holding elected officials accountable, including our Attorney General, including me and others, being a part of the solution as much as possible and getting to what actually is going to work. I will be the first to tell you that a punitive approach isn't necessarily the best approach all of the time. And that's why, again, I'd say we need to strike the right balance. And so more of this. Last thing I would just say, I've encouraged Ward 5 neighbors in particular to engage more with the council, come down, testify at hearings, make your voice heard. And while everyone may not have that luxury, I think it is awfully important because oftentimes we hear from a lot of voices and not those that are most directly impacted by the violence happening in our city. So hopefully that helps. But thank you for your question. Thank you, Commander. I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Feel free to stick around, but if you have to jump, I totally understand. And we're going to turn to our 4D team. I believe Officer Hamrick, you're going to lead us. You are stepping in for Commander Lavenhouse.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you're going to give several updates. And one thing I would just say is we were as a team talking about Ramdas, which is the pharmacy on South Dakota, I think near the Modern. And if I could just flag for you all, it would be great for you all to check in with them. I think that, and we could follow up offline, but our team has been in touch with them after a robbery incident, and I think they just need a little support. So would love to coordinate with you all around how we could check in with that business and ensure they are feeling supported.
Absolutely. I definitely will handle that myself as an outreach coordinator here at 4D. This is going to be a two-part visit today. I do have Lieutenant Rice, which is from 4D as well, who could possibly help me with any questions outside my scope, sir. But it's good to see you. We've done a couple panels together, and Commander Butler, Commander Altieri, it's good to see both of you guys as well as everyone at home. I'm just going to go over a couple things. As we already know, 4D does have a very small portion, well, I shouldn't say small portion, but a portion of 5D within, which is encompassed in our PSA 405. I'm very happy to present that there's a negative 40% crime report year to date as of last year. Now, what I did is I had the PSA 405 crime stats for that entire area, but I was able to, from our crime analysis team, get some of more exact stats for the Ward 5 area that's within the PSA area to kind of justify anything that anyone may see outside of numbers. Though the numbers do not differentiate very much, if anyone has any questions for, I'll be clear to clarify. We do not have any homicides in the PSA 405 area. We have one reported sexual abuse for this year versus last year. And then, of course, we have a 20% decrease in robberies and overall 17% increase of violent crimes in the area. We do have one presented ADW more than we did last year this time, year to date. And as we move down to burglaries for the Ward 5 area, we have 0 burglaries reported for the Ward 5 area. 52% decrease, 12 motor vehicle thefts versus last year's 25 reported, 26% decrease from 14 reported this year versus the 19 reported last year, and a 57% decrease with 6 reported this year versus 14 this time last year. Again, I say overall, grand total of 65 overall crimes and a 40% decrease of 39 crimes reported this year versus last year this time. Those dates are a 30-day overall look from May 27th to May 25th, versus 2023 to 2024. We'll go over some of the things that we're doing as far as initiatives in the area for this year. Initiatives including, and I just heard Commander Altieri speak about it, but retail theft operations in the area, package theft operations to kind of give more of a education. Again, Commander Altieri has mentioned it's all about changing the behavior now, behavior all the way across the board, meaning utilizing the outreach team to give education to our community to better understand some of the things that we can use to deter our retail theft and our package thefts. More so to package theft, like utilizing boxes, things that kind of keep that smiley face from Amazon from being presented on the porch to walker by. This is a lot of the things that we get when we come to our porch pirates, package thefts, and things of this nature. From seeing that Amazon box from a distance, it's a crime of opportunity, because as they're walking down the street, they're looking on these neighbors' porches, they're seeing these boxes. So what outreach team has been tasked to do by our commander, Commander Lavenhouse, which is a very busy lady, by the way. She's there well before I get to work, well after I leave to work, and she has her hands in just about everything from outreach to a lot of the initiatives that are going on in the area. A lot of things that she's tasked us with is giving an education to the community so that we know how to keep those could have been deterred package thefts from happening, meaning that utilizing aftermarket boxes, things to cover your packages, utilizing the incentives that some of these companies are giving, like Amazon has a couple of incentives of delivering your packages inside of your garage, inside of your door, utilizing Amazon lockers at some of your local stores, Walmarts. 4th District just recently had an Amazon locker placed up in front of it, so people feel a little bit more safer about coming up and receiving their packages. So having an education overall about these things to give to the community has been a big thing. Now, as I mentioned before, the 40% drop in crime reported this year is very important, because every crime is important, especially if you're a victim. But we definitely, from the 4D aspect, want to concentrate more on giving more of a deterrent to our community members through via outreach. And these are the things I'm speaking of. New business beat officers are coming soon. This is something that's in the works. We've been mentioning the commander. I hear it quite often at our meetings, what our community members are used to us. Having a community officer on the beat, walking the area, very familiar with the area, somewhat like a lot of our community outreach team members. What I say to the people when we talk about these things is I give an education to everyone all the time of stating that just because you see an officer ride through your neighborhood does not necessarily means that officer knows exactly what's going on in intricacy in your neighborhood. Stopping that officer, having a communication with that officer, creating a bond with that officer is something that I definitely encourage a lot of our community members to do, because then you know who you're dealing with. Also, mentioning earlier from Commander Altieri, not every officer will do the same level of work. So having a bond and meeting that officer gives that individual somewhat of an understanding of what kind of officers you're dealing with and who you need to talk to when the things that whatever need you may need in that community for that time. So this is something I like to talk about quite a bit. CST received environmental crimes training. So that's a plus on our part, because this gives them a little bit more of, as we were speaking of before, crime initiatives when it comes to gathering reasonable suspicion and probable cause, moving to other things that are happening in the area. I just did a walk recently, 6500 block of Sandy Spring, on some individuals working illegally on vehicles in the back of an alley. Of course, this led to a lot of environmental crimes, which was allowing us to make a lot of actions as police officers by using our brother and sister agencies, DDOT, environmental crimes, and things of that nature. So this is something that I always talk about when I'm talking to our community, and that is knowing what agencies to call for different things. A lot of things that our neighbors are calling for, our community members are calling for, may not always be initially a criminal offense. But having these numbers to these agencies gives us the information and the avenues of approach that we need to collect the evidence to get our reasonable suspicion and probable cause to possibly a closure and a crime. Working with OAG's office for nuisance properties is a big thing in 4D. OAG's office is awesome with staying in touch, especially with the community outreach team and finding out some of these things in which I just spoke of. Can we utilize other agencies to kind of come in, find out what these nuisance crimes are doing, create a path to reasonable suspicion, probable cause if there was a crime that occurred, and if not, finding out what resources that nuisance property may need to change that behavior so that they can be better in the community for everyone that's involved. QR codes and businesses is a big thing. Officers coming in, scanning QR codes so we can monitor how often we're visiting our stores, keep a better eye on them for the nuisance issues that they're having with theft, people that are hanging around, on unwanted individuals. This is something that I like to talk about a lot with the community as well. When it comes to our businesses, I like to explain to our community members that our businesses are people too that are trying to thrive and live and make a living as well. So as a community, we need to have those conversations, not only with our neighbors, but with our businesses, so we know what they need to help with some of the nuisances that we may have or the stigmas in our community. Reserve Corps for deploying additional support. I have a sergeant right now, Sergeant Brady, my apologies, Sergeant Brady, who is a full-fledged sergeant. When I first met him, I was like maybe 10 years on the department, and he was a Reserve Corps officer. Up until this time, he is a full-fledged officer, does great work, very adamant, has a lot of good energy on traffic crime and crimes in the area. So if you have family members, people who want to be the police, we need more staffing. We need more people to come in and help out. And I'll be happy to help anybody walk that path. I have people calling me on a regular basis wanting to know what are the requirements for being a police officer in the District of Columbia. Traffic safety compliance checkpoints will be another observation we'll be working on, an initiative that we'll be working on over the summer. Knowing who's coming into our city. A lot of times when I'm talking to our victims of crimes or victims who have seen something heinous that has come into our city, I let them know we have a lot of major vessels that lead into our city and lead out of our city. And some of these events are isolated events where you have individuals coming from another location into our city, see someone that they may have a disagreement with, and it spills out into the streets in our city. Having these compliance checkpoints kind of helps us keep an avenue of who's coming into the city, as well as keeping people informed that the Metropolitan Police Department is keeping an eye on those coming in and out of the city. Some of those big attributes to that will be the camera initiatives, the mayor's cameras initiatives, as well as the real-time crime center that was just recently started. We have cameras in our city and out our city, tag readers that kind of help us assist with all of these movements throughout the city that helps increase our awareness in crime. And then moving on, I'll talk more about my commander. Of course, I do not have the display, but of course, our district number is 202-715-7500. Nikki Lavenhouse is our commander. And as I say, she has her hands in everything, has made herself very available to anyone who needs assistance or information in reference to 4th District, as well as her full stat team. Now, when the commander got there, commander, as I was hearing Commander Butler speak before, I know personally that we had lost all of our captains at one point and had to restack our staffing on so many different levels. But when I say our commander kind of overrode all of that, kind of made it work, she utilized all the resources in the district to make it happen. It was great. So one of the things I like to talk to the community members about is how we move throughout the city. This is a big thing for me because a lot of times we don't pay attention to what we leave in our vehicles. So one of the things I explain is having that trunk clean enough, making a plan before you leave the house, be diligent, talking to neighbors, friends, and utilizing your neighbors and friends when making these trips. Sometimes making these trips in groups helps deter crimes, and it also saves a little gas money. When you purchase things, instead of purchasing parking throughout the city, put these items in your trunk. Don't leave anything in the view of your car. And it kind of deters a lot of the things that are happening to our properties, properties against crime against properties. Forgive me, sir. But utilizing your education and doing your research or your background on aftermarket alarms for your vehicle. Of course, we know 10 years ago, an aftermarket alarm for our vehicle was just massively expensive, especially when you talk about the man hours and cost that it would cost to have it placed on your vehicle. Today, aftermarket alarms are not so expensive. So this is something that I would definitely like to put out to our listeners today. Of course, I talked about the Mayor's Incentive Program for cameras. The last thing I will speak about is 311 calling for our agencies when you have lights that are out, shrubbery that needs to be cut, trash in your alley, or anything that would have to do basically with the services DDOT, DPW, Department of Behavioral Health. These are types of things that I would like for people to commit to memory and or writing it down, putting it on your refrigerator so that you can utilize these things. 311 kind of helps alleviate a lot of that by either visiting the website or dialing 311 to get these services that you need to help us beautify our area so we can find out where these stigma issues are. A lot of times I refer to the bad actors or crime in the area like germs, like a moist, wet, hot area is where a lot of our germs will grow. So what we want to do is we want to keep it well lit, we want to keep it clean, and we want to keep attention to it. This is what I talk about when we're talking about communities in our area. We definitely got to utilize these sister agencies to make sure that we're keeping these areas clean. Calling our 911 and 311 is something I definitely need our community members to be confident about. And when calling, being very articulate and letting us know what we need to be a better department for you. So I'll stop there, sir. I don't have a lot more after that, but I will definitely open up for any questions if needed. Or if my counterpart, Lieutenant Rice, wanted to add anything, you can definitely do so.
Thank you. I don't want to take up too much time, council member. Thank you for having us. Of course, 4D is a proud partner of the Ward 5 partnership, and I'm very happy to be here. I benefit greatly from following after Commanders Butler and Altieri and Officer Hamrick. I think they've covered sort of things exhaustively and thoroughly. One thing that I did want to share that brings me a little bit of extra excitement, because of course I think Altieri touched on it, was that we're looking at numbers compared to a tough year last year. And so that sometimes, if you're looking at numbers that way, can look, some people can look at that skeptically. But one of the things that I know our commander is happy about is that actually our crime numbers are going down even from spring of this year. So typically as we go into summer, we see sort of trends, seasonality trends, and even taking into account those seasonality trends, our crime is down 27%. And then the last thing I want to talk about is just, I know that sometimes our members feel like just because they're one PSA, particularly here in Ward 5, that they're forgotten about. And so I just wanted to bring home the message that, Ward 5 is literally where my heart lives. And I say that because that's where I raised my child. That's where me and my wife live. That's where I walk my dog. And even though I'm not responsible for PSA 405, I do find myself flooded, sort of heading that way, even though, maybe I'm supposed to be over in Kennedy Street and other places. And so Ward 5 is an important piece to us. We're very happy to see the progress that we are making. Of course, in policing, you can never have enough progress. So we keep our foot on that gas pedal, and we're happy to do that with you, council member. So let me turn it over to you so that you have time to say your words.
No, well, thank you, Officer Hamrick and Lieutenant Rice. Ward 5 is home, and I joke frequently with my Ward 4 colleague that the Ward 5 portion of 4D is a bright spot. And that's in no small part because of the work that you all are helping to lead. I do want to lift up some of the questions that we received. One was whether or not there was any update on the homicide that occurred in the 5,000 block of South Dakota Avenue in January of this year.
Yep, I've spoken with some of my colleagues. I actually used to run a couple of the squads over at Homicide. They are still working diligently on that case. Unfortunately, there are no major breaks that I could make public, but that case is not forgotten about. It's one that hits particularly home for a lot of us, particularly on this chat. But unfortunately, there's no large public updates that I can release at this time.
Okay. And then can you give an update on camera placement where you all are installing new cameras in Ward 5 and 4D or plan to in the future?
Yep, we're having some additional success with that. It's the funding for that has been increased, partly, to supplement our work done through the Real-Time Crime Center. I believe we have 3 additional ones coming online this month or in next month, and I would have to follow up with our team to figure out exactly where those are going. But I have seen sort of steady updates about increasing those, and those have been a great resource for us because nothing tells a story better than a camera. We wear them on our chest, and to have them available to our investigators. I do know that on mpdc.gov, they regularly update it, as both for everyone's benefit, but also legally, we're required to put that out there. So if anybody's super curious about the specific locations, they can get it right off the website.
Awesome. And then I did want to come back to that robbery that occurred at the pharmacy on South Dakota Remdus, and any update there in terms of follow-up. And then what I will have Oliver on my team just to work with you all in coordinating a visit with him and or Carlos, as the team there is pretty shaken up.
Yep, I flagged that early in the conversation, so I've already reached out to the commander to talk about organizing something out there. Myself and the commander were actually recently at a business on Kennedy Street doing sort of the same thing, and Officer Hamrick is going to get a QR code put into that pharmacy, and that will help us just ensure from a management perspective that we are giving it some additional support. In terms of updates on the case, I'm not aware of any updates on the case, but if anybody's on this call right now and they have video footage or information pertaining to it, Commander Altieri has provided our tip line, and I would just ask members to support us in that way. But it's definitely on our list of things to do, and the commander will be following up this week on that.
No, thank you. And if you all can just keep us in the loop, we would love to join you in support of that business. And then last thing, well, I do have another question. Okay. Other community members will like to be included in any reach out to the pharmacy. So if you all could let us know, we'll let the community know as we move forward. Last thing for me, there was a report of a child found in a vehicle, I believe on South Dakota and Galloway now a week ago or 2 weeks ago. What was the conclusion there?
Yeah, that was a particularly tragic incident for our members and the fire department and the community members that were out there. That's currently being investigated by the Homicide Branch's Special Victims Unit. They specialize in all fatalities of children 12 and under. What they are going to be waiting for is the release of the autopsy report, and that will sort of guide the Metropolitan Police Department's posture on that. But I know that they were out there that day, and they've done a lot of follow-ups with the family and on their investigative front. But any infant fatality or child fatality is a long process. That's unfortunately one of the units that I supervised over at Homicide, and these things play out over months. Unfortunately, it's a longer timeline. So we're going to have to stand by on that one.
So it seems like the investigation is ongoing there.
Yeah, those investigations remain open, like I said, for months because there's so much science and it's such a sensitive topic. So MPD approaches those things very seriously, but also cautiously and thoroughly because you're dealing with a family that just experienced tremendous loss. But you're also working for the police department and trying to make sure that, if laws were broken or there was negligence, that we're also addressing that in the most meaningful ways.
Understood. Well, thank you all. I want to thank everyone that participated today from our 3D, 4D, and 5D teams. To Officer Hamrick, Lieutenant Rice from 4D, from Commander Altieri from 5D, and Commander Bodler from 3D. It is with the greatest appreciation that I thank you for joining us and all that you do and keeping us safe. I know that MPD is one important piece, but just one piece of our public safety apparatus. And so for those that are joining us, we tend to try to invite other agencies as well, including DBH, our violence interruption teams. We highlighted some of the work that my team is also leading on North Capitol and elsewhere, because we know this is a comprehensive approach to address public safety. For those that are watching and tuning in, a copy of this video will be uploaded to our YouTube page. We will include a copy and a readout in our weekly newsletter. Melissa will drop in the chat ways that you could sign up for a weekly newsletter. If you are a senior and you would like to request a copy of our printed senior newsletter, which comes out quarterly, you can send us a note or email. But all of this is in an effort to keep neighbors as informed as possible, and to ensure that you have as much access to our public safety officers and team members as possible. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next month.